Okay. Welcome this afternoon. Our subject is the court administrator and court professional, including our role as leader, executive, and transformer. And I have a couple of assumptions as I get into this session. First of all, we're going to talk about all of our roles as court administrator. Not just the role of the executive, the administrator, regardless of what position or duties you hold in the court. My assumption is this material applies to you. So you don't have to be in the title of court manager, court executive, court administrator. Secondly, we're going to talk a bit about leadership. It's in the title here. Executive and transformation agent. So hopefully by the time we finish, we'll have some more ideas about how we can be effective transformers. And then lastly, in part of our session, we're going to talk about some tips. We're going to be sharing some tips and techniques. So, are we ready to get started? Good deal. Let me know who you are. Who do we have in the room who are in the position of court administrator? Okay, lots of you. How about position of judge or judicial officer? Do we have any judges in here? Nope. Deputy court administrator, unit manager, division manager. Good. IT professional, HR manager, facilities security professional. Yeah. Again, I will restate, my assumption is this applies to all of us, not just those holding the formal title of court administrator. I also need something from you this afternoon. We're here for what, an hour and a half? What I want is for you to help me do this presentation. And what that means is I'm looking forward to you asking questions, stopping me. I'm looking forward to you providing answers, comments, responding to some things we're going to discuss. I'm going to be sharing some information that might be new, and so I want to ask for your consideration of this and thinking about how it applies to you. I am also going to ask you to do a little bit of self-reflection, because sometimes we learn a lot when we stop and think, and I think we've heard about that from some of the speakers, right? Stop and think about what your core mission is, maybe your core values. So, again, my assumption is we're talking about court managers, court management, and that means any one of us in any kind of position in the court. Sound okay? Good deal. So again, this session is going to cover the court administrator, a mini guide that came out about a year ago. How many of you have received this as NACM members? Good. Those who haven't, I would encourage you to purchase some. We'll talk a little bit more about uses of this manual. We're going to cover leadership, transformation, being a change agent. We're going to talk about tips. We're going to share tips. To get us started, just a brief history of court administration. The federal court system is the area that initially began to use folks other than judges to help manage the court's operation. The first known court manager was in the 50s, and the first official court administrator, court manager, was in Los Angeles. All of our roles, again, regardless of what our position in, are becoming more and more important. NACM, as you're learning through your attendance here this week, has, it's probably over 1,800 members now, hopefully. And we are growing as a group in importance. Why? Because there's lots of initiatives, lots of change, lots of responding to societal needs that the court manager has to assist with. So our visibility and our collaboration is becoming more and more important. That relates to change agent, leadership, transformer. So what exactly are we? What do we do? Are we a magic agent Do we tap dance? Sometimes we follow the maze, right? How many of you get the Ouija board out to figure out how to manage the courts? Sometimes it might help. Are we secretarial support? Are we an all-around player? Sometimes, right? So the first part of this session is going to help us think about who are we and what is our role. Let's start with a day in the life of a court manager. What's a day like for you? Call it out. What's a typical day like? Firefighter. What else?
Crisis manager.
Crisis manager. What?
Staff manager.
Staff manager. What? Referee. Boy, that's a good one. Referee. Referee. You never know what the day is going to bring. So, what's the number one knowledge, skills, and abilities needed for a court manager? What do you think it is? If you're a referee, there might be a certain set of skills, right? What's the number one skill, knowledge, skill, or ability you think a court manager needs?
Patience.
Patience? Boy, yes. How about endurance? What else?
Decisive.
Decisive?
Flexibility.
Flexibility? Yes. Those and more. Here is a typical list of words taken right from job descriptions for court managers. And they probably don't surprise you. Managing, directing, supervising, planning, organizing, serving as a liaison, analyzing, evaluating. Are you surprised by any of these? No. There's probably many more. Literally, these came out of job descriptions for court managers that I have seen. So, how many of you have had this question? You go maybe to happy hour and you're sitting with your friends and they say, "What the heck do you do?" What does a court administrator do? Well, our first exercise is going to help us think about that. So, the green piece of paper you have on one side has what's called a mind map. How many of you have heard of mind mapping? Yes, good, good. Mind mapping is a practice that's kind of like brainstorming. And so we're going to do this miniature brainstorming exercise and think about what do we do as a court administrator, court manager, regardless of what your particular set of duties is. So you have a blank piece of paper, and in a moment I'm going to ask you to use it and write down the key facets of what you do as a court manager. And to get you started, I will show you an example of when I have used a mind map. The topic is different, it's a vacation, but it will show you how to use this kind of technique to think about something. So, here is a mind map of me. This will be great for the sound system. This is my vacation. In the middle, I'm going to go on vacation. So what do I want to do when I go on vacation? Well, when I started this mind map, I thought, perhaps I'll read. Perhaps I'll travel. I might paint because I like to paint. I might go to a museum. Oh, I might do a site visit of a court when I'm on vacation in another community. So I go around and I figure out the key things that lead off the initial idea, and then I build from that. So for example, if I'm going to cook, first thing I need to do is go to a class and perhaps buy a cookbook. If I'm going to read, I might want to go to a bookstore and buy a book, or go to the library. So the idea is build off the central theme, and then working out, begin to enter information that builds off that theme. This is vacation. Your theme is, I'm a court administrator, I'm a court manager. What are the things that I do? So, If one of your responsibilities is being a public information officer, one of the outer spokes, put public information officer. And then what are the related things to that task? Does this make sense? What we're doing is a miniature brainstorming about your duties. So what I'd like you to do is take a couple of minutes and think about your role, and then start filling in the blanks on that chart and expand it as much as you want to describe that task. Question in the back.
Is this about what we do currently or what we would like to be doing?
Well, you could do it either way. When I thought of this presentation, it's what you're doing currently. But as I will say later, you can use this for anything. I am about to consider retirement, so I did one of these where retirement was in the middle. And then I start thinking, what do I want? Do I want consulting? Do I want part-time work? What do I have to do in the consulting arena? You could do it for either. Our focus today is mostly what's our role in the court and how do we map it for ourselves. Did I answer your question? Okay, so working individually, take a few minutes, fill this out. There's no right or wrong answer. And this is a way for you to kind of chart out who you are and what you do. Take a couple minutes, then I'll ask if someone will share. Okay, let's come back together. And it's okay if you've just, scratched the surface on this. The idea is put our job, our role, our function in the center, and then build out from that, thinking about what we do. So who entered what items on some of the outer spokes of this wheel? What kind of items did you enter? Yes, in the back.
Chief Financial Officer.
Chief Financial Officer, okay. And were you able to build some additional things off of that, talking about your role?
I just indicated paying bills, paying staff, processing those things.
Paying bills and processing payments. Thank you. And then right behind you, another comment.
Project Manager.
Project Manager. And ooh, there's some subsets to that. What do you have for that?
Research, communication, delegation.
Good. Good. Anyone else? What did you enter in some of these blanks? Yes?
HR, and I put hiring, performance reviews, new staff training, weekly updates.
HR, performance reviews, updates, training. Yes. Anyone else want to offer what they entered? Yes?
Statistician.
Statistician. And what are the additional tasks that relate to statistician?
Building reports, making sure you're really defining what the outcome of that report is. The numbers can be skewed, and so making sure you're accurately describing what you're really trying to have in the output.
Very good. Boy, you said an important thing, finding out what the ultimate need and outcome is before you just charge on in. Do you see how you can use this chart to kind of build layers describing? Here, we're using it to describe what our role is in the court or what our job function is. This is nothing other than a brainstorming exercise to think about our role. As I said before, you can use this with a variety of purposes. You could be struggling with an operational problem in your court, like case flow management. Put that in the center. Then what are the things you need to think about related to case flow management? Put them on some of the outer spokes. Okay, maybe on one spoke it is create a continuance policy. Okay, what do we need to do to create a continuance policy? Well, we need to talk to the bench. What if it is do an outreach effort on court accomplishments? Put that on a spoke and then build subtasks from that. This is nothing other than charting out an idea. So, this was one exercise we were using to think about our role as court managers, court professionals, court IT specialists, etc. Do you think you could use this? Do you think it's usable for other purposes? I think so. So, Transitioning now to another exercise. Who knows what an elevator speech is? Yes, what's an elevator speech?
It's if you walked into an elevator with someone and you have 3 floors to tell them all about something, what would you explain in that little amount?
Yep. If you walked on an elevator somewhere and you only had the distance of 3 floors to tell someone something important about you, what would you tell them in that short distance? Well, we're going to use the elevator speech idea to prepare a short pitch and a short summary about our role as court managers. It is short, it is to the point. The idea is to pitch something. Maybe you've gone, as I've said, you've gone to a party and someone says, what do you do? It gets very convoluted sometimes when we try to explain what we do, right? This might help us think about it. So, the Harvard Business School even has this online, Elevator Pitch Builder. And believe it or not, there's about 10 or 12 different pages and documents behind this that instruct you how to build an elevator speech. We're going to do a shorthand version of it. The key element is, who are you? What do you do? What do you want? Why? Why is it important? So what I want you to do is, using that concept, working in pairs, answer 3 things here. What 3 key points might you tell someone if you stepped on the elevator and they said, well, we know the judge is the boss of the court and the judges rule on cases, but what do you do? What would be in your elevator pitch? So take maybe 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. Think about the top 3 things, working in pairs. Can't go back. You're saying something to the effect of, who are you? Why is it important? What do you do? Questions on this? It is one more technique to think about our role and how we tell others about it. Take 2 or 3 minutes, work in pairs, and come up with 3 things you'd say in your elevator pitch. Ready? The elevator doors are closing. Okay, let's come back together if you would, please. So we all have our elevator speech ready, right? I hope so. Just to reiterate this importance, in the summer of 2011, Harvard Business Review, in one of their magazines called On Point, had an article, and it's featured on the front cover, 3 ways to pitch yourself in 30 seconds. That goes back to the elevator closes, you have 3 floors, you better get to the point. This article framed it in terms of if you were looking for a job. So they say, here's what you need to do. Have a compelling reason for why you should be the person. Know what it is that uniquely qualifies you. Answer the how for them. How can I help you? And lastly, be able to explain what ties your skill to their need. That's one use of the elevator pitch. I tell you what, every time I turn around now, I am seeing references to this elevator pitch. I think it could be useful to speaking with your chief judge, your bench. Get to the point. What do you want? Why do you want? Why is it important? So let's hear from you. Tell me, what's on some of your elevator speeches? Do I have a brave volunteer?
Happens all the time. I work here in Minneapolis.
Okay.
I'm on the 4th floor of a building that's 24 floors high. I will see different managers, court administrators in the elevator that I need to speak to about whatever. And you've got 30 seconds sometimes to say, I need to talk to you, and I need an answer on X. Here's what it pertains to and why it's important. And then can we make that time to sit down and hammer this?
And that right there, you said an elevator speech. Here's what I need. Here's why it's important. Can we do a follow-up?
Yeah.
Very good.
probably several people in this room I've done that with. And just
Have you been the recipient of his elevator speech? Woo, there's one. Very good. Who else? What's on your elevator speech? Do I have a volunteer before I call on people? Yes, thank you.
All right, I'm an administrator for judges and court staff in the court system handling daily critical operations.
Very good. Very good.
What was the last part?
Handling daily critical operations.
Who else would like to share? What key elements did you have in your elevator speech? How about you?
How I describe it is, the judge does judicial, makes a decision, I do everything else.
Judge makes a decision, does judicial, I do everything else. About sums it up, doesn't it? We didn't have any judges in here, right? Very good, thank you. Who else had an elevator speech they'd like to share? I'm looking at this side of the room, yes.
The easiest way I found to explain it is, I'm the CEO of the courts and the judges are my board of directors.
That's a good way.
So,
So, if you encountered one of them and wanted to tell them your elevator speech on something important, what would you say?
the how, the why, and the what's in it for them.
Yeah.
To listen to me.
The what's in it for them, what's in it for me, that's a biggie. And I think the elevator speech idea kind of sets you up to explain that to someone. So, common things we say when we are asked, what do you do at the court? I'm the CEO. I'm the business manager. The judge is the CEO. I'm the COO, Chief Operating Officer. What other creative ways have you, apart from an elevator speech, told people what your role was? Anything else creative? Yes.
I like to say I provide the infrastructure for the justice system.
Oh, that's good. I provide the infrastructure for the justice system. That's good. I often say I'm like a hospital administrator. I have to make sure everything, the supplies and everything are in place so the doctors can do what they need to do. Or a university administrator that has the classrooms, the schedule, all the things behind the scenes so that the professors can do their job. The infrastructure, that's good. I want to remember that. So what we have done here is another practice to think about what we do, what our role is, and how we tell others about it. Since we do encounter others who don't understand what we do, right? Okay. So we've heard your elevator pitches. I would encourage you to think some more about this as you're transitioning home. What else might I want to test out with an elevator pitch? What else might I want to try with the mind map? We're now going to segue into the next section of our presentation, which is to go over this Court Administrator Manual, which is one of NACM's mini guides. This came out about a year ago. It had been published 2 or 3 times previous, but it had some updated information. For example, changes and different display, if you will, of the NACM core competencies. They were enhanced in this version. There was information added about the executive team concept. We'll talk about that in a moment. The NACM Model Code of Conduct had since been revised, so a new version of that was included in here. The Future of Court Administration and the NACM National Agenda are also included in here. So it is intended to be a one-stop place that talks about who we are, what we do. Again, it's not just the person holding the top title. So, thinking about the court administrator, here's the NACM core competencies. I think several of you have seen these before, right? This chart and narrative about them are included in the book. Here's some typical duties of a court administrator. I'm hoping you see some things that look familiar. Anything up here that surprises you? What about the role of emergency preparedness and business continuity? Does not surprise you? I think there's increasing demand on us to fill that role. Whether it's making sure the technology infrastructure is going to be there, or enough people if a blizzard comes and you can't open the courthouse, right? Backup system for money and financial transactions. So emergency preparedness, business continuity was something that was added to this version of the mini guide. Also, look what's down on the bottom, green or ecologically sensitive practices. What does that mean? What's green practices mean? Don't print it out, don't kill trees, paper on demand. Yeah. How many of your courts have green or economically sensitive practices or teams or efforts underway? How many of you? Oh, that's great. That's great. Recently, we have what we call a green team in my court, and it's a team of about 5 staff members. They decided to get creative and make coffee mugs for everyone, so we would drink out of a mug instead of using throwaway cups. Sold the mugs for $1 a piece. They would customize the name on the mug and a logo. Low tech, hand drawn. They sold probably 50 or 60 of these. Then people in other areas of the city found out about it and wanted them to replicate it for them. Caught on. A green or ecologically sensitive way of doing business. Tiny, tiny example. So, this is a list of typical duties of a court manager. This is extracted directly from this booklet. Here's the executive team concept. Who has heard of this before? Some of you. Essentially what this is, the court manager is the executive partner to the chief judge, and both of you together are the executive or leadership team. Now, I realize this doesn't happen effectively in all courts, but if you can get this kind of partnership where you are literally both sharing leadership responsibilities, you'll have the judge part of the house working with the administrator, non-judge part of the house. Question?
I don't want to get caught up so much in, I guess, this terminology, but how do you see the circuit clerk fitting in here? In those jurisdictions where you have the court administrator with that title, and then the circuit clerk as well, and both are responsible for administering the court.
How do I see the circuit clerk playing into this when the clerk might be separate from the court administrator?
The authority of the court.
Say again?
When they're the appointing authority of the court, they're the ones who hire and fire staff. They're the ones who, negotiate with the county if it's not a municipality.
Good question. I could take this a couple of directions. If you assume that you need 2 halves of a whole to make the thing better, or 3 halves of a triplet, I'd say you need the executive team concept between circuit clerk, court administrator, chief judge, whatever. You need to bring both perspectives and both roles together. Together, they are the policy setting entity and the ones that set the framework for all the operation. Now, is the executive clerk higher than the court administrator?
In Missouri, typically the court administrator works for the judges and is hired by the judges, whereas the circuit clerk is an elected official.
It's that way in my state, and I would say all 3 of them need to have some kind of executive partnering, because they can all 3 have a very different result on their mind map, on their elevator speech, and on their reason for being. The concept here is it's the joint executive team that's going to make the organization better. I don't know if I answered your question. I guess you could say it's communication, collaboration, mutual support. Doesn't mean you'll like everybody. So one thought would be, use this mind map. Executive team goes in the middle, and then what do you want to do to prepare for that to be a reality? It might mean expanding outreach when there's meetings and discussion. It might mean soliciting information from that elected clerk. The concept is together, the executive team is stronger with both parts of the operation. Might be a three-part operation. It is very much like what you described in my state. Yes?
Isn't that part of creating a governance then?
Could be part of creating governance, yeah, and defining whose role, who gets to do what, where you come together. Yes. So maybe you use this mind map exercise and put governance in the middle, and then figure out what you need to be working on to make governance effective. Who else has a question on the executive team concept? Now, mind you, not all judges are initial believers in this. And you can't go back necessarily and say, I'm here to be your executive team. No, you have to collaborate. But this is a sentiment in court management, and it is in this mini guide as an effective way of leading the court. So we've got the executive team concept. Here's some job success factors. When we talked earlier about what's a typical day like, you had to exhibit some of these skills if you were firefighting, right? Or being flexible and not knowing what the day was going to bring. So these are some of the professional skills that are noted in this mini guide. There's also a segment in the book that talks about the future of court administration. We know our work world is not going to be the same in the future as it is now, right? So here are some aspects. It's not all inclusive, but collaboration, dialogue, collaboration could come in hand with the elected circuit court clerk. Interactions, not just in the justice system, but other players. The use of technology, satisfying the expectation of our users. What about this interdependencies? Is there anything we do that we can do by ourselves? I can't think of much. Even the judge making rulings on a case, he's got to have rapport and management in the courtroom and clear direction to the parties. He's got to be familiar with the laws. He might have to be familiar with what the legislature is doing. The presiding judge has got to be accountable for the funding and the resources, right? Interdependencies, going to get greater in future years. System intricacies, and then here's the flexibility. Be adept at change. These are some, but not all, of the future things we expect in courts. So, let's say you have this manual. How do you use it? Here are some ideas. Give a copy to your management team, give a copy to your chief judge, give a copy to your entire group of judges. Use elements out of it for presentations on what you do. How many of you need to have continuing education for your staff? Yeah. Get you some of these, set aside an hour, put on a presentation, you have education. And they further understand their role in the court. Use it training sessions. How about that? Next to the last one, prepare for a job interview. Does anyone in here know someone who has used this to prepare for a job interview? Anyone? It can be used for that. What about self-assessing yourself? Getting this and then looking at yourself up against some of the content that's in here. What about using this to prepare content for a performance review document? Or write a job description? I know there's lots of other uses. Who has another creative use that isn't up here? I know there are some. Who else? Stephanie, do you know of any others?
We use it a lot when we do presentations to funding authorities. It kind of goes with that.
Presentations for funding authorities. In my court, we have our chief judge is about to retire. And I have ordered copies of this and have given it to the incoming presiding judge and copies to our entire management team. That's all of our unit managers. And especially with the incoming judge, ask him to let me know if he had any questions. And at some point, I'll probably sit down with him and say, so what do you think? What do you think about this executive concept? And use it as a vehicle to engage some conversation about what we're doing. So there's a variety of uses of this. I would encourage you to dig out your copy or get more. I do have a small supply of these that I can pull out and share with the funding authority if I need to. Can come in handy. So, questions on this? Let's change gears a bit right now, and we're going to think about our roles as change agents and transformers. And to do that, I want to ask us to think again. Use the back side of your green sheet of paper. When we're thinking about change, it can bring a lot of things up close and personal. And they aren't always pleasant, and they aren't always things we've figured out how to deal with. So let's use this exercise. It's called a SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Who has heard of the SWOT analysis before? Good, some of you have. What I want you to do is think about this analysis. You are the court manager. You are in charge of being a transformer, a change agent. What are the strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities you deal with? I have listed some examples up here. For example, under strength, you have the knowledge, you have the training, you are equipped to deal with this transformation. Under weaknesses, it might be you don't have the skill, or you don't have the interest, or there is no interest in this change. Under threats, examples are lack of preparation, no support for the initiative. And under opportunities, an example is our leadership is in support of this. We want to make this change. Let's go for it. Or the timing is right. So, what I want you to do is think about yourself as a change agent, as a transformer, and I want you to think about what are your strengths to deal with it. Make up a topic if you don't have a real one. Maybe the real one is implement electronic filing. Okay, how am I going to be a change agent? What strength, what weakness, what threat, and what opportunities? Take about 3 or so minutes, jot down your ideas, then I'm going to see what we come up with collectively. What you have identified are challenges. We are change agents and transformers. From our current role in the court, what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? So strengths. What are some strengths that you have identified? Do you have a strength?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. Wonderful. In the back.
Experience with previous change.
Experience with previous change. Wonderful. In the back.
Creative.
Creativity. Creative. Wonderful. You can see how you have these skills already. What other strengths? Anyone else? How about someone over here?
Confidence.
Confidence. Great. We're creative. We've got experience in dealing with this. We got confidence.
We're empathetic, so we can identify the issues.
We're empathetic, so maybe we can identify the issues that'll be challenging. Very good. Empathetic. All right, let's turn to weaknesses. What are some of the weaknesses we might be thinking of?
The documentation to pass along.
The documentation to pass along might not be what you want it to be. That's a real life one. Very good.
Significant time commitment.
Time commitment. Boy, this is going to be a big time commitment. I'm not sure, but this is going to work. Good. Yes?
Lack buy-in.
Lack of buy-in. You don't deal with that, do you? Lack of buy-in. Yes. Another one. A weakness.
Staff training.
Staff training.
Lack thereof.
Lack of training. Lack of making sure everybody knows which direction we're rowing the oars. Yes. Okay. I'm purposely skipping opportunities, and next I'm going to threats. What threats do we deal with?
Accountability, consistency of that support.
Consistency of the support and accountability. Yes.
Lack of funding.
Lack of funding. Yep. Who else?
I put buy-in as a threat
Buy-in.
as well as a weakness.
Yes. I think it's possible you could have something in more than one category. Yes. Over here?
People hoarding information.
Whoa, people hoarding information. Yeah. That's a good one. That's a real life one. Because there's been quite a power base built on that. Yes. In this morning's session, one of the threats identified was, let me say this right, a gavel grab for power. Gavel grab for power. And the speaker meant a grab for someone outside the court system for power, but it could also mean a judicial officer grabbing for power. That could be a threat, right? Okay, so let's end on the positive. What opportunities do we have? What have you identified? Yes? We can mold it to fit our needs. We can be nimble and flexible and make it work. Yes. What else?
Problem solver.
Problem solver. We have the ability to solve problems. I am a problem solver. Yep. Who else? We do have more efficiencies. It will be an opportunity to make sure we have more efficiencies in place. Yes.
The timing is perfect.
Timing is perfect. Timing might be perfect. Yeah, and if it's not, then it might be in a threat category, but then you figure out how to deal with it.
Opportunity for learning.
Opportunity for learning. Yes. Now, what you hopefully are seeing is this exercise kind of lets you think through. Let's say you're initiating something. It lets you kind of think through where your barriers are going to be, where you can capitalize on the barriers, where you can manage them. The whole idea should be that you leverage your strengths, you manage your weaknesses, you also manage your threats, or you contain them, or you find a way to overcome them, and you capitalize on your opportunities. So, think about using this as you transition back to work. Maybe it's a simple problem of mail handling. How could this help you think differently about it? How could this help you think differently? Because in any scenario, I would say we have these four possibilities. We have strengths, we have weaknesses, we have threats, but we have opportunities. Next few slides are a couple of listing of skills and traits of leadership. And they're things that you probably would expect. Listen, respect others, be confident, be passionate about your goals. These are probably nothing you haven't heard before. Be consistent, Of course, we have the NACM core competencies that we can look to for leadership qualities if we want to be a transformation agent. And the NACM core competencies include credibility, making sure we're credible and our actions show it, having a vision and a purpose, and by doing that, make sure the whole organization knows why we're doing, where we're going. Interdependencies, here this is again. What is a high-performance environment? What is a high-performance environment?
I was just going to say a very efficient environment in which you're being able to take few resources and get the most for it.
An efficient environment where you take few resources and get the most out of it, right? What else? Yes?
Where things mesh and I don't know how to say it.
Things mesh and the wheel is able to roll down the hill like you wanted it to. Yep. Yes.
Everyone's going in the same direction.
Everyone's going in the same direction. Yes.
Where employees are empowered to make decisions.
That's a good one. Where employees are empowered to make decisions. High performance environment is one of the key traits of leadership that NACM asserts is important. If you've got that high performance, no doubt you're going to have employees empowered to help, literally help the entity move forward. And then lastly, the ability to do skillful diagnosis about your operation. I think we have a couple of tools today that maybe you can take back and use to make that diagnosis, whether it's on yourself, your operation, your work unit. How the heck am I going to go back and talk to my chief judge about this topic? Use one of these tools. Does this make sense? How many of you have read the NACM core competencies document? Some of you? Wonderful. I would say go back and look at it. In fact, there's some self-evaluation tools on the NACM website so that you can read them and score yourself and see how you do. I would also say we need to think about these questions. Where is our profession headed? What do we want to be in the future? And my gosh, how do we prepare? How do we manage the challenges, the risks? That's the SWOT analysis: strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats. Here's a list of what's called 7 mindsets of professionals. Bias for results, bias for action maybe. Personal integrity. Boy, look at number 6. Aspire to be masters of emotions, not enslaved. I think we heard some elements of that in our speaker yesterday, right? Kind of manage yourself. Manage and balance. Some more items. This is not new. This is in publication. This is all around us. We just need to figure out how we want to use these skills, where we need to have them, where we need to work harder for them. There are some things that are affecting our future environment, our current environment. What worked before doesn't work now. Budget constraints. I would say we have the ability with budget constraints to be more creative than we give ourselves credit for. It so happens I've done a survey recently of limited jurisdiction court administrators around the country, and several of them commented that the fiscal crisis and the budget constraints have allowed them to do things that they wouldn't have been able to do except for the budget crisis. Now, do you believe that? I was surprised, but I think it was true. It has allowed them to implement things because they have to be more efficient. It has allowed some of these managers to be more rigorous in their oversight of staff performance. I would not have figured that would be a result of the budget crisis. That is part of our not so new anymore environment. Here's a really good list. What makes an effective executive? And again, I apply this to every one of us, regardless of our job title, regardless of our role in the court system. And some of this dovetails with some of the exercises we've done before. Figure out who you are, where you're going, take accountability. Here's some keys. Communication underlies everything we do. Comment.
If you could go back a slide.
Mm-hmm.
What are they really saying? Prior to the budget crisis, people could just come to work and goof off and they didn't have to worry about it. But now that there's a budget crisis, people are saying it's okay to go ahead and fire this person and we'll stand up to the merit system or whatever.
The comments I got on the survey related to budget were, the budget has allowed me, my words, to have more of a backbone to implement things I should have done anyway to be consistent. The budget has allowed me, for example, to have, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's a time clock to make sure the employees are attending. Their comments were, because of the budget and the fiscal scrutiny of our operation, I have had to think of new ways to manage the operation. Now that makes sense, right? But somehow it has also helped them in the oversight of staff. I don't have more detail than that, but to me it made sense. Who else has a reaction to that? Yes, Stephanie.
Well, I think the environment is such that change is almost expected now, because I think the funding authorities they are asking the courts to be more fiscally responsible, but they're also looking towards, are there ways that you can consolidate services with the court next door or whatever the case may be. So I think it's kind of creating an environment where change is almost expected.
That's a great way to put it, and I think that's the crux of this. The fiscal restraint has created an environment where we are expected to make changes, not cosmetic changes. Thank you, Stephanie. Another comment.
Concepts was, in our state, we've done some centralization. Even in our district, we've centralized some duties and gotten efficiency of scale rather than, everybody doing their own thing.
That was another follow-up I got from this survey. There is a lot of discussion about consolidating services, merging courts, streamlining the pathways to give services, specifically because of the budget crisis and because of the scrutiny of court and public sector operations. Yes. I don't know that I answered your question, but I thought it was a very interesting comment, and I got it from several people. So it has allowed them to literally stand firm on some operational issues. Anyone else question on these? Okay. There's this great book called You Want Me to Work With Who? And here are some tips. These apply to leaders, executives, change agents. Here's another one. Why should anyone be led by you? This is a famous book, and it has some really good suggestions. Know where your strengths are, know where your weaknesses are. Consider how you're delivering your information. What style? The Myers-Briggs and the different style of how people want to interact. Think about that. Be authentic. These are all things that might play into us being effective transformers. We've heard of good to great. Here's the list out of good to great. So, I now want us to create a good change agent court administrator. So, working in groups, take a couple minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. Write down, what are the traits of a good change agent? Jot them down. Then I'm going to ask for us to share. What are these traits? What do we want a good transformation change agent to be like? Okay, let's see what you've got. I want to know the traits of a good change agent. Let's build this wonderful person from this list of traits you have. Who wants to start us off? Yes.
Open-minded.
Open-minded. Who else?
Visionary.
Visionary.
Honest.
Honest. Adaptable. What else? Huh? Flexible. Understanding. Engaging. Boy, this is a miracle worker person you come up with here. What else? Good listener. Visionary. Creative. Courageous. What else? You have people's trust. Passionate.
I think you need somebody who knows what they're doing.
Somebody who knows credibility, knows what they're doing. Know the ropes. Yes. Okay, so everyone raise your hand and say along with me, I pledge I will do all these things. Absolutely. Okay. Think about which one of these might be tough for you. Put it in the middle of your mind map and then say, how am I going to get there? If it's credibility, what am I going to do to get it? If it's, I know the operation, what am I going to do to get there? All of the things you shared are great traits of a leader, a change agent, and a transformer. So what's keeping us from doing that? Nothing. So, here's a couple more tips to succeed. Know the NACM core competencies. Network. You're doing that by attending this conference. Know your strengths. Know your weaknesses. Read, study. We've heard about personal balance this week and making sure we're paying attention to things that are really important. Resting. Be ethical. Consider the influences you want or don't want. Take risks. What do you think about that? That fits good with a change agent. Take risks. Learn the business. These tips came from NACM colleagues who responded to the question, what are the tips you offer for others to succeed? So these are tried and true. Here's also some good questions to ask. Once I had a boss who was very intimidated about giving one-on-one feedback, very intimidated about giving performance reviews. I decided I needed feedback, so I set meetings and asked him these questions. What do you want me to do more of? What do you want me to do less of? And what do you want me to do differently? Notice these are not accusatory or asking for comments like stop doing that or that's not good, good, bad. Instead it is, tell me what's working, what do you want me to do more of? Tell me what might not be working, less of. Tell me what I need to change. This might work well in your executive partnership with your chief judge. It also helps to do more self-evaluation. Think about this. What are the goals you've set for yourself? What are the things you've accomplished? Let's celebrate that. What obstacles have you got? Use that SWOT analysis. Use the mind map. What help or information do you need? What's hindering you? What's helping you advance? These are all possible self-evaluation questions that can make us better leaders, transformers, court managers, etc. So, think about what we've learned here, what we've talked about. Hopefully there's some takeaways here. Do you think some of these techniques you can use when you go home? Yes? Good. Some of these you might use with your management team. Some of these you might use at home. Remember my example about taking a vacation. You can use some of these techniques about non-work subjects. So, I want to thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for keeping the temperature outside relatively warm for this thin blood person. And I appreciate your participation hanging in on the afternoon session. Thank you, everyone.